What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here in our podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? Got a good one this week. A lot of stuff to get into here. Marvel's new film, Captain America: Brave New World, the return of the White Lotus on HBO for season 3, and then a bunch of music. Drake, Jisoo, Chung Ha, and also the Gorge film on Apple TV Plus, starring Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. Nice, good one this week. A lot of big things, big events. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod. Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get the best of 2025 Spotify playlist link below. Let me know it's good, and let's get into it. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Chung Ha's 5th EP, Alivio. This is her first project in about 3 years, which is an eternity in K-pop. Chung Ha's had a lot of label issues and just kind of weird things going on with her management and that side of things. And there's been singles, a handful of singles the last, year plus or so, but no project that's stuck. It seems to be unclear if she's still affiliated with 88 Rising. This new album, this new EP is not released by 88. It's affiliated with Cacao and More Vision, which is a new label for her again. Nevertheless, we're finally back with a Chung Ha project, and that would be exciting on its face because I think she's been one of the more intriguing K-pop soloists of the last, 5+ years, looking for me no further than the pinnacle of her career, in my opinion, which would be the song Snapping, which is just a A-tier K-pop banger, in my opinion, with an excellent music video and choreography on top of it. I'm very happy that Chung Ha's 5th EP, Alivio, is my favorite release of hers that she's ever put out. Simply, Chung Ha is fitting right into her core strengths, the strengths she's previously exhibited, which is these very up-tempo, club-based songs. When she's on that more bouncy, up-tempo production with a little bass underneath, she really glides on those songs. The single Stress, which has a music video, just a dance pop banger, very bouncy, very up-tempo, but to me the best song on the project is Thanks for the Memories, with these awesome guitar chords, great beat progression, and an absolute banger chorus. The vocals are very strong from Chung Ha, and I really love the vocal progression that you get across that song. Definitely my favorite song from her in the past several releases that we've got. Probably my favorite song of hers since Snapping. Track 1, Creeping, I think really sets the tone well, very bouncy. The chorus vocals are doubled, and I don't think the chorus vocals sound nearly as good as the verses. They kind of push down the song for me overall. Track 2, Salty, is a Sunmi duet, and that has, underlying bass, pretty groovy overall. I like it. I think it's a fun song. I don't know if they complement each other like super well per se. It's kind of like a your turn, my turn thing for the most part, but the song works nonetheless. Track 3, Loyal, I really like the melody in the beginning of that song, but the hook is very weak, repetitive, underwritten, really kind of takes away from the song overall. With Beat of My Heart, I love how Chung Ha is belting out the vocals leading up to the chorus. But then on the chorus, you get these snares, and they kind of like mellow out the song. The energy almost gets ratcheted down like half a degree, which is not what I was expecting. The song's just okay. Even Steven Happy Ending, though, I think has really fun guitar. And the best chorus on the entire project. And the beat, I think, really picks up with that chorus. That song is definitely a highlight. And the last song, Still a Rose, has a very iconic, like classical string arrangement that they then remix. And that's all in the intro of the song. Pretty fun production overall. So yeah, I think like this is a really nice bounce back from Chung Ha. I think more than anything, at this point, we want to see this momentum continue. Not these random singles that don't really go anywhere, really last all that much, which has kind of been what's characterized her last 3 years between projects. If she's found her footing, hopefully that would be good, because it just feels like external forces have always been getting in the way of this solo career of hers, and that's just not something we need to see, but we can only hope. Let me know, though, what'd you think of Chung Ha's Alivio? Do you agree it's her best release in a long time? What was your favorite song? And for more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back, Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Jisoo's debut EP, Amortage. Jisoo, 1/4 of Blackpink, as we know, but the least established from the solo perspective as well. Kind of came as a surprise pretty recently, a few weeks ago. We got the announcement that Jisoo had signed with Warner Records for her solo activities, and would actually be releasing a project today. And it's just funny to think about the timing of all this, because of course in 2 weeks we'll get a Lisa album, and then a week after that we'll get the Jennie album, and we got the Rose album in mid-December. So we're really in the month of solo Blackpink right now. It's been interesting to have that timeline so constricted, not really giving each other time to breathe. Of course, they're all on their own labels. They all have their own solo plans, but it does feel a bit tight. But I think that's pretty obviously due to the fact that the second half of 2025 will be a Blackpink comeback, a Blackpink reunion. Either way, Jisoo's back with her label Jisoo as well as Warner behind her. And she's given us only 4 songs, which, in tandem with her debut solo music, which was 2 other songs, it's only 6 songs in total. And it's not a big surprise because Jisoo has pretty clearly been the least ambitious from a solo music perspective of her bandmates. She's seemingly a lot more interested in the fashion world and being an actor. And of course, there's nothing really wrong with that. It's pretty common in K-pop that not everyone in a group has the same level of solo aspirations. Either way, I was a bit surprised that we're going to get this, to be honest. I was kind of expecting to not get any new Jisoo solo music, and then we would roll into that Blackpink comeback. But here we are. The question remains, of course, is this music more interesting, more engaging than Jisoo's previous solo music? The lead single, Flower, was pretty lukewarmly received. Yes, it did numbers. Of course, Blackpink does numbers. The stands ate it up nonetheless. But it just wasn't too interesting of a song. And Jisoo as a performer, I thought wasn't really served too well on that kind of more minimalist style production. She's interesting because I think she's the least popular of the Blackpink members, which again is something you'd say with a strict curve. She's incredibly popular, incredibly famous. But when you compare her to Rose, who has pretty obvious musical ambition, Jennie and Lisa, who have really massive star power and presence as stars and whatnot, Jisoo kind of slots in behind them. Still an essential member of Blackpink and a strong vocalist in her own regard. I haven't necessarily been anticipating Jisoo's solo music, but it has been an opportunity for her to more establish herself and her own voice a bit more outside of the Blackpink system. Jisoo's debut EP, Amortage, is certainly a lot more engaging than her previous release, Flower. This is dancey music, club music, very up-tempo, very bass-heavy. These are bops. These are fun songs to listen to, without a doubt, these 4 songs. Does Jisoo make a great impression vocally on these songs? Does she really stand out as these being her songs versus could these songs have been really anyone? I don't necessarily think she does, but she does acquit herself pretty well on these more up-tempo beats, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. There are some tight hooks here. There are some fun grooves. I definitely like this music a lot more than the previous stuff. And I think there is something to be said for the fact that these 4 songs all feel really cohesive and coherent in terms of what she was going for, which is clearly a more dancey vibe than the last time around. Ultimately, this music reminds me a lot of the project we just got from G-Idol's Mini. Very similar. Of the 4 tracks, you have the lead single Earthquake, which the drums immediately stood out to me because it very much reminds me of Imanbek's Roses remix. Remember Roses from, early pandemic 2020? Those drums are just in my head forever. Very catchy, sound there. And this brought me right back to that. The song's probably the least written of the bunch, though pretty lyrically slight. And in general, a lot of these songs have big breaks for dance and whatnot. There's a lot of space on these songs. Track 2, Your Love. This one's very produced, a lot of vocal effects on Jisoo's vocals. I enjoyed the keys, and the chorus is probably the strongest bit of it all. Very up-tempo, good hook for sure. Tears has a bit more of a guitar groove on here, and definitely a lot of bass, but probably my least favorite of the 4 songs. And then the last song, Hugs and Kisses, the delivery from Jisoo gave me hardcore Tate McRae vibes in terms of that kind of more understated but still emotional singing. But yeah, I think more than anything, I'm not really clamoring for Jisoo solo music. I'm not really clamoring for any of the Blackpink ladies solo music, just because I love them as a unit so much more than I like them individually. That being said, Rose really impressed me. I was very effusive in my praise of that album. high hopes for the Jenny album for sure after hearing Zen, which really grabbed me. We'll see about the Lisa album. But Jisoo is definitely a step in the right direction. Definitely a more interesting path forward for her solo-wise, considering, again, she doesn't totally focus on this with her solo activities. So the Blackpink members, I think, as a foursome, have really impressively, I think, been able to navigate this post-YG world where they've been able to take their careers into their own hands solo-wise while still remaining as a unit at YG as a group. They really don't have many peers in the K-pop space in terms of pulling this off. But again, that kind of speaks to the level of power and cachet that they had due to their immense fame and success. So we'll see what happens with the Lisa album in 2 weeks and the Jennie album right after that. And I'm sure we'll hear about more Blackpink stuff before we know it. But let me know, what you think of Jisoo's debut EP, Amortage? What was your favorite song? What did you like most about it? And for more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Some Sexy Songs for You, the new collab album from Drake and his OVO Sound label mate of many years, PartyNextDoor. Drake has obviously been in the news a lot in the last year. We will not be relitigating the rap beef with Kendrick Lamar. We will be sticking largely to the text here with this new music. I do find it notable that Drake did not take a break, take much time off. He had alluded to that when For All the Dogs came out. Obviously, everything changed in the time since then. Currently on tour in Australia, walking out with a custom sweatshirt of some kind with bullet holes and fake smoke coming out of it. Pretty amusing. Drake seemingly leaning in to the combativeness of what's going on and not entirely moving on. He kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth on that topic over the course of this album, acknowledging the beef, talking about moving past it, etc. So not really sure. Either way, I never was under the premonition that Drake would die as a cultural force or something as a result of this beef. He already grievously lost a beef before, of course, following Pusha T's release of The Story of Adidon in 2018. Now, Kendrick Lamar, a significantly bigger figure than Pusha T, and exclamation point was dropped with this beef by Kendrick playing Not Like Us at the Super Bowl, of course, after really accentuating it at events like the Pop Out concert in LA last June, things like that. So it's still apples and oranges in a certain sense. But that being said, Drake is successful for his craft first and foremost, right? So if the work continues, the attention will be there. And that being said, Drake has pretty obviously objectively been in a creative rut for some time. I think apart from his work with 21 Savage on Her Loss, which is already several years ago at this point, there hasn't been a whole lot for us to really hang our hat on. And with Drake, I've kind of abandoned the wish for Drake to drop a, quote, classic album, a great album in general. He's really not proven to be a good album artist, not since the Obama administration at this point. We're pretty far removed from that. So as a result, I think what we're left with is a repetitiveness. With a lot of Drake's lyricism. It's getting quite rote and kind of dull in a certain sense. The way he speaks about women, the way he speaks about his fame and things like that. We're not really getting any new insights into Drake. Therefore, we really kind of only need him to give us new bangers or new party songs. And he's done that in a sense, but not to the same degree as, other parts of his career. It's okay to have a fallow period, but at the same time, when you've kind of made your bones on being the guy, in the genre, it's a bit of a different situation. And I'll be honest, I was not exactly excited to learn that he made a collab album with PND. I've really never cared for PartyNextDoor as an R&B singer. I find him pretty boring almost all of the time. Drake and PND have, I think, 3 or 4, higher profile collabs officially, of course. PND certainly did a lot of writing for Drake that we know of, OVO Bootcamp and whatnot. Those Drake and PND collabs don't really grab me, never have. So Wasn't really excited about that going in, but it's also pretty clear from the jump that Some Sexy Songs for You is very much a Drake forward album, and it's not a 50-50 proposition. This is not like Her Loss. This is not like Drake's work with Future back in the day. This is P&D very much in support of Drake, and there are several songs on this that don't have P&D involved at all. While Drake certainly surprised me by dropping a full-length project, Some Sexy Songs for You with PartyNextDoor, so soon after a lot of his own proclamations about taking some time off and letting things breathe. Not entirely surprising that he decided to make new music so soon after Kendrick's exclamation point at the Super Bowl. I find Some Sexy Songs for You largely forgettable, which is unsurprising given Drake's recent run of projects. He has not been a great album artist for some time. However, there are some intriguing moments on Some Sexy Songs for You, which remind you of why Drake has been so successful, and that is namely his versatility and his adaptability in terms of the songs he can make. Look no further than Nokia and Die Trying. Nokia is an excellent club banger, one of Drake's best in several years, probably the biggest hit on this release, but Die Trying is Drake's closest rendition of like an acoustic Post Malone Noah Kahan song in the vein of Drake, and it's incredibly captivating. And that song right there is why we're going to keep going back to Drake, even if his cultural cachet is waning, because he just does things musically that other artists don't do. Now, does he do it with consistency? No, certainly not in the last, 7 years or whatever. But when you do get those moments of brilliance, they really grab you. One of the other highlights for me on Some Sexy Songs for You would be Small Town Fame, which is kind of like a classic Drake flow. I think it's quite good. I love some of the bars on it, popping out in Arizona. I feel like Tate McRae. Love the Canada reference there. And then, it should come as no surprise that I'm a fan of his Charlie XCX reference, putting Charlie up her nose, X on her tongue. She been geeking hard. She done had a brat summer. Love it. This is kind of classic Drake wordplay that I feel like we don't get as much as we used to. Brian Steele, I also like the flow on that. Very reminiscent of like a Little Baby flow, to be honest. I think the big problem with a lot of this album is that it's a lot of, crooner Drake, R&B Drake. And that's just Drake at his less effective than he is when he's a rapper, because he's an excellent rapper, excellent wordsmith, especially when he's dialed in. And he's like so-so at the R&B. Of course, the fact that he does both is why Drake is Drake, obviously. But I've just never really cared for like the lean hard into crooner stuff, Noticeably, of course, this, dropped on Valentine's Day, February drop, reminiscent of two of his other February drops, So Far Gone, way back in the day, but also If We're Reading This. And If We're Reading This happens to be my favorite Drake album of all time, but that also was very rap forward. And this album isn't that at all. Probably the most polarizing song on the album because it has a lot of good qualities, but also a lot of grating aspects. That would be Gimme a Hug. I love the horns on it, but the hook is very weak. But then there's also like this Boys to Men ass like sung background, some fun bars. Also Drake doing R&B. It's kind of a mismatch, but in an interesting way. And I just wish if the hook was like anything else, I think I would like this song quite a bit. Other news we just got about Drake regarding him going to Wireless Festival once again in England, and noticeably he's headlining all 3 days with like different themes and different set lists throughout. I believe day 2 is Drake with the Mandem, which we would have to assume means Drake with all his contemporaries in the UK that he's close with, assumingly Giggs and Central C and Skepta and who knows who else. That's awesome. Drake has done Wireless before. Think of the Non-Stop music video. The live performing is from Wireless, I believe. Or was it Reading and Leeds? I don't know. The thing is, Drake does festivals in the UK. He's done them at least, one or two other times. And he never does festivals here. Obviously, that's due to like touring, contracts, like non-compete clauses and things like that. Just a shame. And I felt this way back in 2018 when the Non-Stop video came out. But like, it would be so sick to experience Drake in a general admission setting like that, He's largely been an arena artist in the States, never really doing the stadiums. Kendrick, just announced the stadium tour with SZA. Drake could do stadiums, but he usually doesn't. He does the smaller venues, but there's still big arena venues. I just wish he would do a festival one day, but in the States, doesn't seem like he will. That would be very interesting, though. I'm very curious, like what happens at Wireless with Drake. But I think the main takeaway, and you can see the, fanfare that he's getting from his fans in Australia right now, that Drake is still a massive artist. And even if he's taken a lot of L's, including the self-imposed stuff like the bullshit lawsuit against his own label for the success of Not Like Us, which was the craziest way to respond to a rap beef, months later. Leaving all that aside, Drake still has a lot of pull, and I think there's some moments on some sexy songs for you. Nokia and Die Trying really grabbed me. I think Give Me a Hug will grab a lot of people, warts and all. I like Small Town Fame a lot as well. Other than that, I didn't like too much. I mentioned Brian Steele as well. Spider-Man, Superman, I thought was all right. Yeah, it's kind of par for the course in terms of a full album length, but I think more than anything, just it's like Drake back on the horse, so to speak. Let me know though, what'd you think of some sexy songs for you? What was your favorite aspect of it? How you feeling about Drake these days? Drake moving forward, given all that's happened? Let me know. And for more music reviews, more rap reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Back Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of The White Lotus Season 3 on HBO. The White Lotus is back once again after a longer wait than normal. The strikes affected the delay. Nonetheless, it's back as the new preeminent Sunday night HBO show, which really speaks to just how far this series has come. Lest we forget, White Lotus Season 1 came into being because Casey Bloys and HBO reached out to the show's creator and sole writer and director, Mike White, and asked him if he could make something happen during, the confines of COVID. Turns out a secluded shoot on a resort in Maui was something you could pull off during COVID. Thus, the White Lotus came to be. And now it's, frankly, a spectacular anthology series with a little bit of recurring characters here and there, of course. And it's just great to be back. It's very exciting. With the White Lotus coming back and bringing us to a new location once again, this time the White Lotus in Thailand, setting the stage for a intriguing and fun and dark story. The casting once again is spectacular. Jason Isaacs, Parker Posey, Leslie Bibb, Carrie Coon, Patrick Schwarzenegger, Walton Goggins, Amy Lou Wood, Lisa from Blackpink. It's loaded. It's a really exciting mix of characters. Some might be familiar, some might not. The themes of this show through its first 2 seasons in terms of people's own self-interest and self-owning and whatnot has not worn out its welcome at all, and just seeing everything play out is, I think, really appealing. That's why people like this show. Mike White also deserves a lot of credit for being able to make something that feels really fully formed, as the writer of one. Thinking about the characters that we do get here, after only seeing one episode, we don't have too much insight in terms of any plot. I think a noticeable change here is that we didn't see a body wash up to begin the season, wash up or show up or whatever, like the first 2 seasons. What we actually see is a crime, mass shooting of some kind at the resort, like in progress. It's like happening. So we don't really know the extent of what's bad things are going to come. A little bit of a change, I guess you could say. But character-wise, Walton Goggins clearly with some axes to grind, something under the surface. Awesome character to cast here, of course, an HBO veteran at this point. And his much younger girlfriend is played by Amy Lou Wood, who broke out in Sex Education. I love that casting. That's a great look for her. A fun scene that she had with somebody else that she meets at the bar in episode 1. The concept of the LBH in Asia, the loser back home, I thought was awesome to see that presented on mainstream entertainment in the West. That was really funny. Of course, the person that she meets at the bar is the younger girlfriend of none other than John Gree's Greg, who was in and around the plot through the first 2 seasons. That was a unknown, recurring character coming back. Of course, we did know that Natasha Rothwell would be reprising her season 1 role as Belinda, coming from the White Lotus in Maui to learn more about the Thai wellness techniques that they're working out over there. And that's cool. Great to see her back. She's a great presence. Exciting. Lisa from Blackpink, Lisa Manaban, she is a staff member at the White Lotus. Of course, Lisa is Thai. Really awesome, I think, use of like star power to cast her on this show. I think it's pretty good, and we'll see what kind of actor she is. I haven't really seen her do any acting to this point. Her bandmate Jisoo has actually been the one doing all the acting. Nonetheless, I'm excited to see her and see like to what extent her role actually is. Like how big is it? It seemed decently meaty from the first episode, so we'll see. Other character grouping would be Leslie Bibb, Carrie Coon, and Michelle Monaghan, who play these trio of friends. And Michelle Monaghan's character Jacqueline is like a famous TV actress, but there definitely seems to be some things going on the surface there, especially with Carrie Coon's character Lori, who is less successful than her two friends. Carrie Coon back on HBO. HBO legend at this point, honestly, between The Leftovers and also The Gilded Age, now The White Lotus as well. I mean, she's one of our great TV actresses, right? So I have no doubt that she's going to be an amazing presence on the show. That's really exciting. And then also, I think the last, key character group here would be the Ratliff family, this North Carolina family headed by Jason Isaacs and Parker Posey, and then their children. The oldest son played by Patrick Schwarzenegger. They also have their daughter and their youngest son as well. Awesome. I think Parker Posey is giving you a similar type of performance, similar type of character to what Jennifer Coolidge did through the first two seasons. We'll see how that continues. I never was the biggest fan of Jennifer Coolidge's Tanya. She kind of felt, I think, just like the extreme nature of her aloofness and her quirkiness just kind of waned on me. When watching the show, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. So we'll see how Parker Posey holds up in the fact that she's part of a larger character group as a family versus being this one-off, character like Tanya. Hopefully that's a little bit different. I love that Jason Isaacs is here. Been a big fan of his. Of course, everyone thinks of his role as Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter, but to me, I always think of his role as the villainous colonel in Mel Gibson's The Patriot. An amazing performance for him. So really excited to see him here. And Patrick Schwarzenegger, kind of giving you a little bit of what he did in a small role on Amazon's Boys spinoff Gen V. So we'll see. Obviously, this guy seems horny and trying to get on the prowl, and I'm sure that'll have hijinks and negative consequences like anything else that happens on this show. So we'll see. But yeah, I think this is a great grouping. There's some interesting stuff with who's running the hotel here, the matriarch of the hotel, so to speak, and her American husband, who probably has some connection, perhaps familial, to Walton Goggins' character. We'll see about that. There's already butting heads between Isaacs and Goggins. I'm with it. I think, the show does a great job of like setting you in a place, even though we're chilling at a luxurious resort, right? But it definitely feels transportive, like the previous two seasons did as well. I think the way it's framed, the shots they use, the way it progresses through story. It's a really impressive series. Obviously, season 2 became a huge Emmy force for HBO. I expect that would continue with season 3. We also know that the show is in a sharp ratings trajectory. Season 2 was significantly more popular than season 1, and the early returns in season 3 are continuing that trend. This is a massive show for a reason, just because people like to hang. There's underlying mystery, but there's just great acting, excellent writing, of course. It's kind of what you want from an anthology series. And again, it's just so funny that this kind of came out of necessity with the pandemic more than anything else. But yeah, obviously can't really speak too much about what's going to happen with the plot, but that's kind of the fun, is just being along for the ride at the White Lotus. So yeah, let me know, how did you feel about the season 3 premiere of the White Lotus? Any early theories? Who you most looking excited to see on the show? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, old Mike Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of The Gorge, the new science fiction action horror film from Scott Derrickson, starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller. This film debuted on Apple TV Plus, written by Zach Dean, a script that made the blacklist a few years ago. Now the movie is here with a lot of star power behind it. Sigourney Weaver also in the movie in a supporting role. And it was really the star power that attracted me to this. I think Apple's certainly up and down in terms of the effectiveness, the quality of their films. But what's never lacking is stars with the big high-profile movies. Whether think of last year with Fly Me to the Moon and Wolves, movies that aren't amazing, but certainly give you famous people in them, right? Of course, a little bit removed from Killers of the Flower Moon at this point. The F1 movie coming soon. Looking forward to that. But this movie, I think like just seeing Anya Taylor-Joy do more genre after Furiosa is pretty appealing. Scott Derrickson back into the swing of his career post Marvel, and Miles Teller. This is one of the more high profile leading roles from him after Top Gun Maverick, to be honest. I thought The Gorge was just okay. The best stuff about this movie is its high concept premise. Two solo snipers, one from the east, one from the west, guarding this mysterious gorge against whatever rise up above from beneath the depths. Intriguing premise for a sci-fi film, and when your two snipers are played by compelling faces such as Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, there's a lot to like. I think the very beginning of the movie, begin to get to know one another, develop a romance. I think all that's very strong. The movie falls apart though because it doesn't maintain much tension. It reveals the identity of what's in the gorge within the first 30 minutes. There's some cool set pieces, there's some cool action for sure. Ultimately, I think the best stuff is the character work. It's fun to watch Anya Taylor-Joy in an action movie once again. She's proven herself very capable at this following Furiosa. Teller's a bit more reserved than I'd like, given how charismatic of a performer he can be, but I still enjoyed his presence. I enjoyed their chemistry. I think if the movie had spent a lot more time above the gorge, there's the sense of dread, the buildup of what's going to happen to them. Obviously we know they have all these weapons, these automated turrets, and there's their armories and whatnot to defend against. But what's down there? What's going on, right? Is it truly the gates of hell? What's going on? If we built up to that and then spent more time with them getting to know each other and having the romance take off, I probably would have found that more compelling. But because we dispense with the pleasantries kind of quickly, and next thing you know, we're going into the gorge, and both of them are down in there. It's okay, well, that's what we're up to. And then I think once we're there, it's okay, there are these mutant hollow men down there. Let's find out why. And then, the plot reveals are all pretty standard stuff, nothing too out of the realm of science fiction fandom's brain, there's a lot of alien inspiration, unsurprisingly. None of the body horror is too captivating. There's some cool stuff. There's a sequence when they're crossing through this web of tissue, we'll say. I think the ending sequence down there involving the Jeep winch is certainly the best action in the entire movie. A lot of it's pretty garish CGI down there. It doesn't look amazing. Some of it looks fine, but I was kind of excited when they got back up out of the gorge again, and there was still 30 minutes left in the movie. And I think everything in the gorge, the actual a hardcore sci-fi body action horror stuff, is the least interesting stuff in the movie to me. Sigourney Weaver's character definitely on set for 2 days. She's really only in 2 scenes. Pretty one note, you understand her motivations type character immediately. Also some expository dialogue in the movie at times, but yeah, overall, I still enjoyed it for what it was. I just think this is a movie that could have been a lot better, actually, with a little bit of a different structure, but I still enjoyed it. And I think that's largely because the talent on screen is really lifting up the material, which definitely has some flaws. But yeah, for a movie that's only on streaming, it's hard to do better than this, especially in the beginning of the year. Frankly, this is a movie that would have been well served to be released in theaters. Probably could have found a decent audience, given leaning into the horror marketing a little bit. Nonetheless, still happy I watched it. Let me know, though, what'd you think of The Gorge? What'd you like most about it? Do you agree there's some structural things you would change if it was up to you? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Ne Zha 2, the new Chinese blockbuster animated film that is setting myriad box office records. A massive movie this is. Going to talk about the film industry implications of this movie's performance and also review the movie itself. I've talked about Chinese blockbuster films here and there over the last several years. I'm lucky enough to live in a city where there's a large Asian population, so any big Chinese movie that gets some kind of United States release will be playing by me. And I usually try and check out the ones that interest me. Usually these are the bigger movies that often release around now. The Lunar New Year period obviously is a huge film going time in China, and a lot of movies will come here after their success. Ne Zha is based on 16th century Chinese mythology written during the Ming Dynasty, like kind of like a classic Chinese myth storytelling. So these are familiar characters, a lot of them anyway, a lot of the deities in this story. And this is the sequel to the original Ne Zha animated film in 2019, which also was a massive hit at the time, grossing over $700 million, almost all of that, of course, in China. And not to bury the lead, but the sequel has now grossed over $1.7 billion, setting a bunch of records. That's the highest grossing IMAX film in China, over $100 million. That kind of pales in comparison, though, to the big accomplishment here, which is the fact that this is now the highest grossing animated film of all time, passing Inside Out 2, which just set that mark last year. And also, I think most impressive of all, this is the highest grossing film in a single territory, grossing well over $1 billion now in China, and taking that record away from Star Wars The Force Awakens, which previously had that mark in the $900 million range in United States and Canada. And, sans inflation, the record's a little different, but still, I mean, we're kind of blowing past it. And I think it's interesting, but also not entirely surprising that this has happened. You always see a lot of like a kind of ridiculous hand wringing, like, oh, you can't trust the numbers out of China. How do we know? Can we verify these box office receipts? We never seem to say that when like Avatar 2 becomes the third highest grossing movie of all time, in large part due to strong performance in China. But like a Chinese movie dominating in its home country is somehow a surprise. I never really understood that. I think people just have to think about the data when it comes to this. Here in the United States, we have around 40,000 movie screens, and in China, they have like 85,000, more than double the amount. And China is, a rapidly maturing film market that's still a lot newer. And obviously, anyone who's been paying attention knows that the more recent trend over the last few years, kind of coinciding with COVID, is that the Chinese film public is kind of gravitating towards, their own product, their own movies made, for them, by them, movies, in-house films. And not that Hollywood can't find success in China. They still are. It's still happening, but not to the degree that it was in, say, 2015. Again, with few exceptions, like an Avatar 2. It was really only a matter of time before something completely took off in China. And I really buy into it because I'm seeing the residual effect of that here in Boston. This movie got a bigger release than any Chinese movie has gotten since I've been paying attention to this sort of thing, playing at multiple theaters, not just AMC Boston Common, but other locations as well. And it's selling out like every showtime. I saw this movie on a Tuesday, and there were people sitting in the front row. We're already past opening weekend, and yes, it's not getting like a million showtimes a day at every theater, although it was at Boston Common. This movie is really being attended to, and in my theater experience, I was pretty sure I was the only white person there, which is not a new experience for me at these movies. But it was like an all ages thing. There were kids there, there were families there, right? And they seem really excited and locked in. There was like kind of like a palpable energy to that. Now imagine what that must be like over back in China, where clearly there's just a lot of attention, coming to this movie, and a lot of hype for it. And again, it's the sequel to an already massive movie. And again, I really see no reason to doubt the figures, because like this could have been faked long ago, right? The Battle of Langchenjin 2 did not surpass the first one. The Wandering Earth 2 did not surpass the first one at the box office. Now they decided to lie and make a massive movie. I just don't buy it. And again, you see the genuine attention for the movie here in the United States. So only imagine what it's like in China. So this is crazy. This is a cool story, I think. And it kind of, again, confirms the trends and things we've been paying attention to. And I imagine we're going to have another $1 billion Chinese movie before we're all said and done at this point. Why wouldn't we? Anyway, that's enough about the real world implications. The question though is what is the movie like? Ne Zha 2, like is it worth going to see? Do you need to see the original beforehand? what did I think of it? Ne Zha 2 is broadly successful because this is a spectacle first movie. There's some compelling action in this film. The movie's humor is also quite effective. The comedic timing even worked for me as someone who had to read the subtitles to watch the movie. As a completely animated movie, it largely looks good, although I think towards the end, when there's a ton of characters on screen, I think the animation falters a little bit. The biggest criticism of the movie is that because there's just so much plot to process, we don't have a lot of time to spend with any of the characters, and there's a lot of characters. Yes, some characters change, although a lot of times that's more physical manifestation versus actual character development. Some of the body humor stuff with Ne Zha and Yao Bing when their souls are together, I think that stuff's really funny, kind of a classic trope. I really enjoyed the various trials. We see a lot of different settings. It's really a grand adventure type story, and I actually found it pretty easy to follow. They do a nice job with the recap in the very beginning of the movie. You don't really have to have any knowledge of the first one going in. I just wish maybe the movie had a little bit more time to breathe in spots so that you could spend a little bit more time with the characters. I won't spoil any of the twists, but there actually were more twists than I expected, and I do think they're pretty effective. A character presented as a villain has more under the hood than you expect. I'll be very curious how the Ne Zha character goes in the sequel, because after being this impetuous, literally demonic child through the first two movies, he finally forms into a fully fledged adult or teenage warrior by the end, as evidenced by the picture behind me. Wonder what that kind of that vibe will be like, because I think Ne Zha's demonic nature is a key aspect of the character, probably the one key thing you can latch onto. I guess at times I had a hard time kind of grappling with the rules of the world, so to speak. Obviously this is mythology. Everyone can fly around. Also, everyone can seemingly transform. I just never quite understood the extent of various characters' abilities. Not that it really mattered, again, because there's just so much plot through this movie that we're always watching something happen, something new happen. You don't really have a whole lot of time to really dwell on anything like that. Ultimately, I was kind of surprised that for the most part, this film is pretty open-ended, and almost every character makes it out, scot-free and still on the board. And it's clearly a story that is all about scale, and it can clearly scale up some more. So I guess my biggest thing would be I hope the animation can maybe be punched up just a little bit, because I think of something like The Wandering Earth or The Wandering Earth 2. That's a movie with really good CGI, so I know Chinese filmmakers have that in them, but to me there was some times where the movie visually just looked a bit flat, and I think there's just more that could be done to improve it. Although I really like the dragon design. I think that looked pretty nice. But yeah, Ne Zha 2, I think of the Chinese blockbusters I've seen recently, right? Last year I saw Article 20 and YOLO. Those are obviously live action movies set in reality. This is a big change, and I think it was pretty cool. I can't help but just reflect on the theater experience I had, in a sense that people were hyped, people were laughing, kids were locked the fuck in. I heard a lot of comments from kids around me. Honestly, a bit perplexing that there were so many kids seeing this movie, and that's what we've been hearing, that families are going to see this, because it's quite violent. This is a PG-13 movie for sure, but there were 5-year-olds at my theater nonetheless. Ne Zha 2, what a movie industry story. Certainly didn't expect a Chinese movie to dominate to this degree. Nevertheless, here it is. Still not entirely shocked. Let me know, though, if you've seen the movie, what did you like most about it? What stood out to you? What about the performance of the movie has stood out to you? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Captain America: Brave New World, the new superhero film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the 35th entry at that. And this, of course, is the 4th Captain America film, but the first to star Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson in the Captain America role, one he adopted at the end of the Disney Plus series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which came out almost 4 years ago at this point. And Captain America: Brave New World, this movie was supposed to come out at one point last year, got delayed to this year, featuring a challenging production and post-production, going under heavier reshoots than to be expected for most blockbuster films. That being said, I was going into the movie with an open mind because I actually was pretty grabbed by the marketing and the trailers and whatnot. I definitely thought there was a chance the movie could stick the landing and actually kind of be somewhat decent. Harrison Ford joined the MCU, taking over the role of Thunderbolt Ross from the late William Hurt, and the marketing, of course, heavily, advertised and focused on Ross's transformation into the Red Hulk as a key feature of this movie. Unfortunately, the production issues that plagued Captain America Brave New World are very apparent when you watch the movie. This film is really busting at the seams and is clearly a Frankenstein monster of multiple shoots and myriad screenplays. At the end of the day, it doesn't have a standout set piece. There's not a key moment of action that you can point to that's super engaging in this movie, which is a pretty big sin for a superhero film. Picking up where Falcon and the Winter Soldier left off makes a lot of sense, of course, but the desire to close myriad loose ends from well-regarded films such as The Eternals and 2008's The Incredible Hulk is pretty confounding and ultimately just not that compelling. I like Anthony Mackie just fine, but when he's given this level of material and this lack of depth, there's not a lot he can do. A lot of expository dialogue. The movie really wants to be like a political thriller film, harkening back to some of the elements of Winter Soldier. The movie's just not very super, and that's an element of the movie, of the story, right? Sam Wilson, not a super-powered character, and at times he has insecurities about that, which he should have taken the serum, like Steve and Bucky. He literally says it in the movie. I think that presents opportunity for the character to be more interesting, and I definitely think Sam Wilson was a lot more interesting in the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV series, which was a show that ultimately really failed to land. It had a really bungled finale, but still presented some interesting ideas and really fleshed out a supporting character from the previous MCU ensemble in Sam Wilson, of course. I think what you're left with is just a movie that's really kind of concerned with wiping our hands of a lot of MCU stuff. And did I need to revisit Tim Blake Nelson's character from the '08 Hulk movie? No, and to be honest, I had forgotten about him. I had forgotten he was in the movie. Perhaps is it a bit clever to use the Celestial Island from the end of the Eternals, using that to be an introduction of Vibranium into the MCU? I like that. That's fun. Kind of reminds me of some early Phase 2, Phase 3 era MCU storytelling where they would kind of weave stuff in like that in the background to kind of seed future story. It's pretty fun, pretty amusing. I think now that we're at the point where there's been so many unpaid off MCU post-credit scenes that when you have these other developments like this in the film, it just kind of feels like we're piling up and we just need to execute on stuff. And that feeling is going to continue, right? I think everything's riding on Fantastic Four as a real paradigm shifter for the MCU, but Brave New World and probably Thunderbolts as well kind of feel like holdover projects in a certain sense. I enjoyed Harrison Ford in the movie. I definitely think he's trying to do his best in the movie, but again, the material isn't awesome, to be honest. I think the Thunderbolt Ross character is so thinly veiled facsimile of certain figures in our current political system that it just kind of makes you roll your eyes. For a movie that ultimately gets quite geopolitical and quite international, it also feels so small scale, which is kind of a tough situation to be in. The whole conflict with Japan in the movie, it's wow, this is not super engaging because we know neither side is actually the bad guys and we're just kind of spinning our wheels. I don't know, man. This is a film that it was in rough shape. It was probably a bit ill-conceived, we know that Giancarlo Esposito's character in the movie, Sidewinder, the first, the big heavy in the movie, but he's kind of the false flag villain, not the true villain in the movie, of course. He was completely added during reshoots, his character. As a result, Rosa Salazar's Serpent Society character completely excised from the movie. This film just had a lot of issues with it, story-wise. And don't know how much of that could have been fixed at the beginning, but things you could fix would just be that it's not visually interesting at all, to be honest. It doesn't look great. Pace wise, tone wise, it's also super serious. I mean, in my theater, the the theater goers lit up when Bucky Barnes shows up. Sebastian Stan shows up for a one scene cameo in the movie. And that was actually also happened to be one of the most humorous scenes in the movie. Otherwise, the movie's super serious, super dour, and it's not what you usually expect from the MCU tone and MCU style of storytelling, right? The Red Hulk stuff doesn't happen until the last 20 minutes, despite how heavily it was hinted at and, of course, marketed. So, don't know how well it really lands as like a kind of like a one-off thing, you know? Like, I guess this kind of reminds me of like Hulk, he paired like Hulk and Thor Ragnarok, or Hulk and Avengers 2 with the Hulkbuster, like that was Iron Man, of course, but like those brief moments of Hulk stuff within a non-Hulk movie, those elements land a lot better than how Red Hulk lands here. It kind of feels a bit extraneous because we ultimately know that Ross isn't really the bad guy still, so like it just, I don't know, just the manipulation of it all just feels a bit contrived on Tim Blake Nelson's villain character part. Just not the most compelling antagonist. Danny Ramirez plays like the new Falcon, the sidekick to Sam's Cap, and he's doing his best as well. Charismatic, charming for sure, but pretty one-note character. Has to do a lot of exposition and be the main joke teller for the most part. Isaiah Bradley is in the movie, particularly in the beginning, but because he was introduced on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and most people who go see this movie will not have watched that show, there's incredibly clunky dialogue to re-explain who his character is and his entire backstory that was, expounded upon to decent effectiveness on the TV show already. So there's just like really poor elements of dialogue where they have to be like, "Oh, Isaiah Bradley, you're the guy who got fucked over by the government and in prison for 30 years. It's just like, it just doesn't read and sound normal, Did I enjoy seeing Takahiro Hira play the PM of Japan? Of course, he of Ashido and Shogun fame. Yes, I enjoyed seeing him. That was cool for what it was. Shira Haas is new to the film as well. Of course, an Emmy nominee for Netflix's Unorthodox, playing the head of security for Ross, President Ross. And she doesn't have a whole lot to do either. And they also like clearly like sanded down her actual character's like comic book origins, which of course is an Israeli Mossad agent, and they kept her, but they changed her backstory to be an ex-Black Widow, and I don't know, like I kind of wish they had like more conviction, just like stick to what she is, call her an Israeli character, maybe present that as something that's a bit controversial, like take a stand, take a side with it, don't just like change it just for the sake of changing it. It's kind of lame. And yeah, I guess in conclusion, like the movie just doesn't surprise you really at any turn, doesn't grab you any standout set piece at any turn. Yeah, it's fun watching Harrison Ford attempt to invoke, clear and present danger in Patriot games and Air Force One and all that all over again. But he's also limited by a pretty poor script. We know we'll see Sam and probably Danny Ramirez again, in the Avengers films with Secret Wars. The notion that Ross proposes of Sam reuniting, getting the Avengers back together again. I'll be curious if that thread's actually picked up at all, because obviously there's a lot of seeding for like a young Avengers to exist in the MCU, given the characters we have right now. Maybe Sam is the one who actually gets together all the adults to reform a new Avengers. We'll find out in 2 years, at Avengers Doomsday probably. But yeah, this one is honestly kind of a stinker. I didn't hate watching it, but it just doesn't really rise above at any turn to really stand out, unfortunately. Continues a pretty poor run of form for the MCU for the most part. Deadpool and Wolverine, massive hit last year, but also comes with a bit of an asterisk because that is a Fox inherited MCU property and has a different set of expectations and backstory to it. So, as I said, we'll see what happens with Thunderbolts, which I'm optimistic about. I like the look of the trailer and stuff, but we'll see. And then Fantastic Four, the first thing that's going to really feel new and consequential in some time, has to really land, and we'll see how it goes. But let me know, what'd you think of Brave New World, Captain America 4? Are you excited about it? Did you hate it? Somewhere in between, let me know. Actually, the next thing for MCU is actually Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus in about a month, so we'll talk about that next. But yeah, let me know What are you thinking about it? How you feeling about the MCU these days? And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do for the pod this week. Next week, we have Oscar predictions. The time has come. Very exciting. Going to talk about Paddington, Peru, which I missed this past week, but definitely want to get to. Also, new music from Tate McRae, Roddy Ricch, G-Dragon of Big Bang. Come back after several years. Very exciting. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/NostalgiaPod. Linktree.com/NostalgiaPod. See links below. Get the best of 2025 Spotify playlist link below. Let me know it's good, and I'll see you next week.